Hello YouTube, this is my latest creation. It's a mini Mastermorphix, I think that's what it's called. Or Mastermorphix, yeah, it's Mastermorphix, I'm pretty sure. And it's following up in the series with my little Mastermorphix here, the 2x2 version. I've already seen a video on this, so basically I decided to do something a little bit different with this puzzle. Next week I will have it stickered and done a little bit better than this. But basically this is just a quick series of videos that basically I took during the construction of this to kind of show you guys how to make it. Just want to let you guys know this is not a tutorial, and I actually didn't even really plan on having those videos be anything but just a mental note until towards the end when I decided, hey, this could be a, kind of entertaining video. So this is a bunch of videos showing you just basically illustrating how I made this. Alright, so this is what I'm going to cut off in this step. I'm going to keep kind of a sequence of steps. This first step is to turn it into one of these. And this is, black parts need to be cut off. Alright, so now I have these pieces cut off roughly, and they're not all the way, so I'm gonna sand it to kind of, I guess, make everything perfect, even though it's looking pretty good. Alright, so now I've done the sanding. I'm glad that I decided to do it that way so I didn't accidentally take too much with the sanding, and now it looks really good. So now I'm going to epoxy sculpt these four, and rough epoxy sculpt. Alright, it's been epoxy sculpted. Epoxy sculpt is half dry. It's not quite fully dried yet, but it is assembled. So now I'm going to sand it and de-sticker it. Alright, so now I got it sanded. I didn't unsticker it, I just realized that, but I got it all sanded nice and smooth. And it looks really good so far. It would be a perfectly fine, totally finished right now puzzle if it was a, what's it called? A half truncated cube. And now that it's been epoxy sculpted and it's very smooth and it's very solid, and when you turn it, it's nice and aligned, you can't tell. So that's good. It's hard to turn with one finger though. As you can see, the one that I've been comparing it to is actually like really bad. Yeah, very early mod. Anyway. Alright, so I got my first extended piece. At this rate it's going to take forever, so I'm probably going to extend more than one piece at a time, but this is looking pretty good. Got this little piece of aluminum just bent in there, extending it like that. I have no idea exactly how to make this puzzle, I'm just sort of going for it. Hopefully it turns out good. And this was day one, so this is a really good day one, I think. I went from a standard keychain to one round of epoxy sculpting, got a half truncated cube, and now I got one out of 48 pieces that need to be done exactly like this. So, I think 48. Or, no, it couldn't be 48 because there's 4 times 6. I can't remember. That's a lot though. No, 24, half that. But yeah. Alright, it's the next day. And focus. I've taken away the support. And here's just the epoxy sculpt. And it made a perfect 90-degree. Sanded it. Lighting's not too great. Focus. And it's pretty seamless. So that's good. And basically now I'm going to build up more pieces with those little L-shaped pieces with epoxy sculpt and see how it goes. So yeah. Alright, so I found this pattern of these aluminum L pieces that if you basically put them in a certain way, so this configuration, you will eventually get it so every single one of these little triangle edge pieces is going to at least get one. So that means that if I do this, and then after the epoxy sculpt's dried and it's been sanded a little bit, I do it again. In theory, in one day, because I'll be able to epoxy sculpt this later on today, I should have every single edge done, which is pretty cool. So that'll be this day. Alright, so I got all these pieces that have the aluminum L epoxy sculpted. Took quite a while. What I realized now is that it's like this one, and this one in kind of like a spiral on each side. It's always the same pieces on each side. Except that one, I think. Yeah, that one's different, but it's kind of weird how it just fits together so perfectly like that, but that's good. So now, go let that dry, take off all the aluminum pieces, I'll get back to you. It's probably going to be a whole day. Alright, so it's been the full day. I wasn't able to get a video of just the pieces that I had in the last video sanded because the batteries on this camera were completely dead, so I had to just go ahead and epoxy it while I could. So basically you got the nuclear looking symbol kind of thing on each side. So yeah, I upgraded the aluminum pieces to something a little better. So now I'm going to wait until tomorrow. Alright, so it's the next day. I've taken off the, not great lighting here, but I've taken off all the metal pieces. And now I'm going to do a rough sanding. Got it. Alright, so I got it sanded pretty roughly, but looks good. And for some reason, despite being so far along it hardly looks like a triangle so far. I mean, if you're not looking for a triangle in this, you would not find one. It doesn't really even look like a cube anymore, so it's kind of like halfway in between. So now I'm going to do a center to make sure that I can do centers properly, and then later today probably do the rest of the centers. So yeah. Alright, so I got the center epoxy sculpted, just done by hand, and I hope that like there's these little metal pieces, 3 metal pieces that just fit in, and they go all the way to the bottom to the center cap, and I just kind of forced it in there. So hopefully when it's done, it should be a perfect shape that just needs a little bit of sanding. And the best part about the little metal pieces is that they don't interfere with the other centers, so that means that I can do all the other centers tonight if it works. So yeah. Alright, so I got my first focus. I got the first center done. It's just elevated like that. It turned out great. The method is perfect. So I'm definitely going to stick with that and get the rest done today. They're definitely very good. Did a light sanding, so it's not exactly how it came out. There's little imperfections, but it didn't take much sanding. It was pretty easy. But one thing that I've noticed, and I actually have a little bits of epoxy sculpt rebuilding the corners of this thing because they're not that sharp. One thing I've noticed that these little edge pieces are not all the same. So like, let's see, get a good example here. Like this one and this one is bigger than the other one by a little bit, and the angles aren't exactly the same. So if I was to like line up them like this, you can see there's a little crack, and that's actually a pretty good example of them being close. You can see here, like, these are lined up on the bottom, but on the top there's like a crack here and then it overlaps there, so I'm gonna have to work that out. Alright, so I got the puzzle reassembled with the one edge that has been epoxy sculpted. It's looking pretty good so far. Everything looks fine. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna epoxy sculpt these 5 other centers, and then I'm going to start sanding it, because you can see that like on this side there's like a little bit more, but on this side there's less. So I'm going to do the centers and then start sanding it down to perfection. Alright, so I got all the centers epoxy sculpted, and it's kind of annoying because these pieces of metal are really sharp, so I cut my hands up a bit. But anyways, so now the centers have been all epoxy sculpted. Now I'm going to wait and sand it and then work on the corners. Alright, so I sanded the pieces down quite a bit with the centers, and it looks awesome. It turned out really, really well. It doesn't look too good right now because it needs to be, finishing touches, but for generally just a good foundation, this is perfect. I pulled this off with pieces of a pop can. Alright, so I decided to go the route of just pure epoxy sculpt for the corners. I didn't want to mess around with plastic sheeting and everything. I just decided to go pure epoxy sculpt. So this is the first corner. I just used 3 little pieces of metal to, do what I've been doing this whole mod. So this is the first corner. Hopefully it works out well, and then I can do the rest. It's getting really, really heavy. It's already heavier than the Mastermorphix, and it's not even done. Alright, so I got the first big corner done. Looks pretty good. Didn't quite put enough here, so I'm going to have to re-epoxy sculpt a little bit of it, but looks pretty good. So now I'm going to do the other 3 corners. Alright, so I got the other 3 corners done, so it is now pretty clearly a pyramid. And I will get back to you when I have roughly sanded it. Alright, so I got the rough sanding pretty good. It's not perfect yet, but that's the basic construction.